Hi, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Mona, as a seasoned academic and industry professional with over 3 decades of unparalleled experiences spanning both sectors. Throughout his illustrated career, he has taught and trained more than 21,000 students and 2,800 exclusive executives across the prestigious universities and corporate setting globally. An estimated thought leader, Dr. Mona Shah has led and contributed to numerous national and international research projects focusing on sunrise sector such as build the environment, sports, healthcare, agribusiness, and the green economy. She is widely recognized for her pioneering contribution to the real estate, infrastructures, and project management education in India, having conceived over 120 courses circulars, including several postgraduate programs. She holds a copyright of postgraduate program in real estate. Her academic credentials are further underscored by her authorship over 93 research papers and a case studies published in leading international journal, as well as three influential books. Millennial Poison to Lead 2020 and Real Estate Marketing in 2009 and Property Matters Made in Easy in 2001. Dr. Shah is a recipient of several prestigious awards of teaching and research excellence from renowned institutions such as Indian Building Congress and NICMR. She has been invited in visiting professor at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, Liverpool, John Moores University, UK, and Simonic International Universities. She is actively involved in scholarly publishing, having served as an editor in NICMR Journal of Construction Management, a member of the editorial board of the Journal of Project Management in Practice, UTC Sydney, as a peer reviewer of several reputed journals, including the International Journal of Construction Management, IJPMPB, Journal of Housing of Research, and the Journal of Construction Innovation. As the founder and the director of Vyati Systems and Research in DSR, she now leads the initiatives in training and competency development, leadership development, and select the research projects delivering solutions by harnessing technology and cross-border expertise. Once again, I am welcoming Dr. Monasha to this webinar. Welcome, ma'am.
Okay, good evening from India and welcome to all of you from the different parts of the world that you have signed up. Today, we are meeting for a masterclass which I have specially curated for Edubex Learning, and it is dealing with all the problems that we are having in the world. We all know that we are going through tough times, and those tough times are related with the crisis, the disruption that all of us are encountering due to the Middle Eastern war. Precisely the, Iran, Israel and US war. So what basically we are going to do today is that we are going to see how, smart countries and smart companies navigate through these crises. And, we'll go through the flow of the class, as I call it, would be mapping the historical disruptions, the something called the critical goods vulnerability. What is it that? What are those goods that immediately get affected when there is a supply chain crisis around the world? Then why we should be understanding these disruptions and what we should be able to do, because just understanding them is not enough. We all have to be navigating all these disruptions. That's basically the idea behind this whole discussion today. And of course, at the end, I'm going to African and Asian scenarios also, while take you through the European, Asian, and particularly towards the end, I'm dedicating a little bit of time way Africa is affected by this disruption in the global economy. So with this, we begin. I just want to tell you before we start that disruptions have been something historically happening, nothing really new, because whenever there is trade, we become vulnerable or we become exposed to any kind of disruption because goods are coming from very far away. When these goods are transported from faraway places, obviously the risk of transporting them also increases. So the first, known disruption is called the Antonine Plague. I mean, this is a recorded one, and therefore, I have taken this as one of the earliest examples because this happened 165 to 180 Common Era. Just after in the beginning of the first millennium, this outbreak of smallpox actually wiped out huge populations, and that time the Roman Empire was at its peak, and this disruptor was due to a pandemic. And some say, from whatever characteristics people have found in history, they say that most of it resembled the smallpox outbreak. So what happened was that Rome had established its supply chains from the Mediterranean to the north of Africa, to the east, up to India, and also with other places in Europe, right up to UK. So till the United Kingdom, we had that the Roman supply chains were working pretty, efficiently, and this major pandemic actually wiped out a huge section of the population. It also affected the agricultural production in that place, and labor force shrunk because this labor force which died was the one which was operating these vast logistic networks. So what happened was that the severely crippled it severely crippled regional economies and military supplies. So this was as old as almost 200,000 years ago that I'm talking about, in the first century after, the earlier Christian era, as we say. So this is what you need to understand, that this was the first one. I would like to go ahead with the next. Before that, let me just the next example is, of course, the major, historical incident, which we call the fall of Constantinople. Now, Constantinople was actually ruled by the Romans, and when the Romans fell in 1453, the Roman empire fell to the Ottoman Empire. There was a huge problem across Europe. And the siege of Constantinople, where the Ottoman Turks they stopped, all the trade by heavily taxing the goods that were coming into the city and going onward into Europe. So this disrupted the overland networks of the Silk Road. And we know the Silk Road, which starts from, China and goes all the way China to India, and India onward to the west of Asia, and from the west of Asia it goes from the Mediterranean into Europe. So the Ottoman Empire effectively sealed this Silk Route as it is called, and what it ended up doing is that it choked the flow of the eastern spices and the Chinese silk to the western Europe, and it forced European kingdoms to intensively explore alternate sea routes. It was a good thing. This disruption was something good, because what we find is that the Americas got discovered because Christopher Columbus went westward and found a whole new continent called the Americas. And Vasco da Gama from Portugal went through the Cape of Good Hope. He discovered the Cape of Good Hope and found a route to India and China. Eventually, the Italians and everybody followed. And so the Ottoman Empire's choking of the supply chain actually proved to be a boon for everybody, because it improved the global trade because of the alternate maritime routes that got discovered, and new lands also got occupied by the Europeans. So we know that colonialism took root only after this kind of incident that took place. We take one more example, which was the Roman Sasanian Wars. Again, actually there was the Roman Parthian Wars and Parthian Sasanian Wars, because that's when the Romans moved east and captured Persia. So this happened between the 1st and the 7th centuries of the Common Era, and this was a very closely fought geopolitical warfare over the Middle East and Mesopotamian choke points. So again, this damaged the Silk Route because the Silk Route became unstable. India had been trading with Europe through the Middle East for millennia together. So because of these, constant agitations and wars and battles being fought in that space, like it is now today, India's trade was seriously affected, and so was China's. So the ripple effect of this was the trade caravans could not move easily, and in Chinese silk and Indian pepper could not reach European shores. And because of this, Rome had a huge problem because the Sasanians were a very strong, kingdom, empire, which had conquered not just Persia but also parts of Central Asia. So they began levying a lot of embargo on the Roman, goods, not the Roman goods, the Indian goods that Rome wanted, and it led to massive trade deficits because they had to pay a lot of tariff to the Sasanian Empire, and there was a gold outflow to the east because the traders from China and India raised their prices and said they wanted better guarantees that their caravans and all will be looked after. So this guarantee was given in the form of higher gold exchange. And this led to severe inflation inside the Roman Empire. So these were massive disruptions of those times, the ancient and the medieval times, which I have told you. This is another example of the blockades that happened during the Crusades. Okay, this was during the Mamluk ascendancy in Egypt in the medieval period of 12th to 15th centuries. This was all about conquest and blockades. The Mamluk dynasty, which was ruling, effectively choked all the goods coming from Middle East going to Europe again, and there was general geopolitical instability because from Egypt they used to attack the surrounding Roman protectorates and all that, and there was constant battle happening, and obviously there were blockades against the European merchant ships that were either entering or leaving from the European shores. So the same thing happened, disrupted spice and textile trade from India and the Arabian Sea, and Europe became dependent on transit nodes and faced frequent shortages. So new supply lines had to be created, and North Africa was actually discovered because of the Crusader blockades. So this gives you an idea that global supply chains have not always been easy. It's not something new that we are facing today and that it has never happened before. It happens time and again because some countries decide to wield their power, or some countries decide that they need to do something about the incidents that are going on in some other countries, and they get into the war, and things begin to happen which are not always good for. I know I'm putting this very euphemistically, but yes, it takes a toll on other economies which are dependent on this smooth flow of goods from one place to another. So it is not a good thing, but there are a lot of reasons why such blockades take place, which I will be covering in the next few slides. But first, you must know that in a globalized world, in an interconnected world, we have now begun to take these things. If it was spice and pepper and silk and all that were critical back then, Today it is different goods. So if you and I, we have to understand the modern supply chains and what vulnerabilities can happen in these supply chains. We must understand which are those goods that are very, very vulnerable to disruption. So these are some of the goods that are extremely vulnerable in the modern world, because they have that their disruption affects a whole. I mean, the magnitude of disruption affects the whole economy. So all of us know what is happening right now. So I take that as the first one: the petroleum, oil, and gas, which is the disruption can happen because of geopolitics, like it is happening right now. It could be because of natural disasters, or it could be because of wars. So geopolitics is different from wars. Not all wars, not all geopolitics ends in wars. Okay, but generally all wars are an effect of some kind of geopolitics happening within a region. Now, all the industries get affected when it comes to petroleum, oil, and gas, because it is a key input. In today's world, without use of oil, we really cannot function. Not a single economy can function without the use of oil. So it is a key input. What happens is that prices rise. It's what we call cost push inflation that takes place. And because there's a cost push inflation, production gets affected, and there is an overall recessionary kind of a downturn that the economy faces. And that's precisely what is happening all over the world, because we are right now, because of the Strait of Hormuz being under a blockade, we are facing this problem at the moment. The second sensitive good is the semiconductors. All of us know that the world is going digital, and the more digital we go, the more the need for electronics, the computers, the vehicles are also digitized. Every single thing in our life is digitized. The reason we are taking this masterclass using, this platform is because everything is digitized. And what is the base? What is that good that goes, that enables all this to happen? It is the semiconductor. So only two countries in the world, Taiwan and South Korea, are the giants. They control more than 90% of the world supply. And global electronics are completely dependent on these two manufacturing nations. Now, if China, we know there's an ongoing problem between China and Taiwan. And from time to time, China threatens Taiwan of taking over, of sending warships. In fact, their warships are very close to the Taiwanese waters. And every time that happens, the whole world shudders, because we know that if anything goes wrong with Taiwan, then the supply of semiconductors is affected. India now is, of course, just getting into this, and we have a manufacturing facility which is coming up in India, and there, at least with India in the fray, the world can then, heave a sigh of relief, because we will be able to, do a little better than what Taiwan or South Korea, because these are very tiny nations. Then we come to something called rare earth minerals. A lot of this has happened with President Trump making a significant, press he's given around rare earth minerals. He said that he wants to control the rare earth minerals, found in different countries in the world. And then he goes and declares those countries as rogue states and then captures. So we have the example of Venezuela. We have the threat and his friendship with Pakistan, which says that we will provide you with rare earth minerals. And what is this rare earth? China right now controls 80% of the supply. So China wants rare earth. It buys rare earth minerals from almost all the countries in the world which have these minerals. There are 17 different types of minerals in this category called rare earth. And some of them, the most known, are called the neodymium and monazite. So these are used in magnets for wind turbines, for advanced electronics, for defense purposes. And therefore, this is the next big thing when it comes to, because now we are moving into wind energy, we are moving into solar, we are going green in order to move away from fossil fuels, because dependence on fossil fuels means that there's going to be a geopolitical vulnerability built into it. And for these green sources of energy, we need strongest magnets, that hold the whole thing together, those turbines and everything, and then rare earth becomes important. So now, if with China controlling 80% of the supply, every other country is vulnerable to anything happening with China. Then we have the three normal minerals that we are familiar with, which is cobalt, nickel, and lithium. These are most important because, again, in our ambition to move away from coal and oil, we need these for renewable energy storage, or we need it in electric vehicle batteries. What comes in the way and what disrupts their availability is resource nationalism and export bans. So, what is resource nationalism? Just in one line, I will tell you. When a country, a sovereign nation, says that we will not, trade with our natural, wealth, just because some companies, want it. So, generally, some companies means they are multinationals. They enter a country, they start operations there, and take away the minerals. So, resource nationalism means that people and the government, they say that we are not, or the political leadership says that we are not willing to give away our minerals just like that. So that also disrupts the global supply chain, because again, we are making a transition to green energy. It increases the automotive rates, which are dependent on fuel. And finally, the biggest emergent disruptor of this century is the AI, the artificial intelligence. Because we need AI, we are using AI across all the industry. We have to understand that we have to use agentic AI very responsibly. This is not about a product. This is about the disruption that takes place in the way human beings are going to lead their lives in the future. There will be massive layoffs. There will be job losses. There will be so many things happening because of AI taking place, that it is going to affect all the other supply chains, which are services as well as goods supply chains, just with this one element called artificial intelligence. So governments obviously have to do much better in thinking about a policy, so that globally we are responsible country citizens and we don't disrupt each other's economies irresponsibly. So typical reasons for disrupted supply chains are man-made and natural. Okay, we must understand that more and more, we are adding risk to humanity by man-made, reasons. Wars is a man-made reason, and the costs of war are irreversible. We lose. Nobody really gains in a war, because global GDP falls, corporate losses increase, and it shaves off. It is seen that if the world goes to war, it shaves off 1 to 3 percentage points from the overall world GDP. Okay, please listen to what I said. Please pay heed. It shaves off 1 to 3 percentage points from the world's GDP growth. So we have wars right now happening. We have skirmishes, small skirmishes, as well as full-fledged wars. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, which has been going on from 2023, has choked agricultural and energy exports, and it is adversely affecting two continents of Africa and Europe. The Strait of Hormuz blockade has roughly affected 20% of the global seaborne crude, and large portions of fertilizer exports have got stuck over there. Long cargo rerouting is happening. It's going over the Cape of Good Hope. It is going, some, ships are coming through Australia, and it's a complete rerouting is happening. Some are coming from South America, and something which was so easy. It was the fastest route connecting Australia, Asia to Europe, has suddenly got choked. And so the freight costs have gone up, and war risk marine insurance premiums have also increased. At least in India, the government has assured that these premiums will be paid by the government, or they will, kind of give a subsidy to the marine, companies for this insurance premium, which is going through the roof. And of course, there are innumerable small countries which have got badly impacted due to this energy crisis. There is also something called a third party burden. Your countries and my countries have not involved in the war, but we are watching from afar, and we are definitely getting affected. So even though we are not at war with any country, we are still paying a very heavy burden through secondary costs, because we are facing a decreased output. So there is a study which says that those countries which are not at war, but which are still party to a secondary war, over a period of 5 years, it is seen that their domestic output reduces by 10% year on year. So that's a huge loss for our own country's GDPs. Another man-made crisis is a pandemic. Global trade decreased, as we know, the COVID-19 pandemic. Global trade decreased by approximately 7.4% to 8.3% in 2020. And with that, so many sectors got affected very badly, which is services, travel, tourism, which plummeted 16.7%. And trillions in GDP output globally was wiped out. So this became what was the largest recorded one period collapse in global trade in the history of humanity. Why did this happen? They say that the green cover around of the earth is decreasing and diminishing very fast. And therefore, the animals which was sequestered in these forests are now exposed to humans, and humans exposed to these animals and these microbes and all that are vulnerable, because we are not used to this, and we are therefore becoming vulnerable to pandemics. Then, of course, again, climate change is a very man-made thing, where infrastructure gets damaged, maritime choke points occur because of natural calamities like tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes. It leads to agricultural shocks. There is a financial vulnerability due to extreme weather events. We know that the Arctic caps and the Antarctic caps, snow caps are reducing very, very drastically. So again, this is a man-made thing, because climate change, the human effect on climate change is very, very high, and alarmingly so. Then, of course, there is something called a natural economic cycle. All that goes up must come down. So there is a high, there is a recovery period, and there is a recession, and there is a trough, and there is a boom, a recovery and a boom. So cyclical economic downturns also tend to, while they are occurring, especially when there is a recession and when there is a depression, they definitely affect and disrupt the global supply chains. So what is threatened today? The most vulnerable of these is the current oil shocks that we are facing. So Yang and Fu have written a paper in 2025, and they said that the resilience of any economy is threatened because of supply chain pressure. We are seeing that now. Energy uncertainty, we are seeing that now also. And there is something called oil supply shocks, which is, of course, what is happening with us. There is no steady, production of oil, because in the war that happened in the last 3 months, most of the oil companies and oil infrastructure was targeted, and a lot of this sensitive oil infrastructure, which is the rigs as well as the containment tanks, all these have been attacked and missiles and all that. So there is a supply side, reduction. And of course, sometimes there are oil demand shocks also. Sometimes it happens that if a country is like China and India, they are on a very fast growth pace. Brazil, they're growing very fast. Their GDP is growing extremely fast. So their requirement of oil, they are oil guzzlers, as they say. They need a lot of oil, and because they buy that oil, there are the rest of the world tends to have less oil because these countries are guzzling oil. So a simple example, like in 2008 we had the Beijing Olympics, and when Beijing declared Olympics, 10 years before, when they began to build the stadia and they began to build the roads and everything, their demand for coal, their demand for steel, that is iron ore, went up by a huge magnitude. So they were buying steel and coal and fuel from practically all those countries willing to sell to them. So other countries were not getting enough stocks because most of the stock was being lapped up by China. And that has continued because the Chinese pace of growth has been pretty high, even 10 years following the Beijing Olympics. Now it's the turn of India, which is buying a lot of oil and other, resources also. So a resilience of a country gets threatened by some actions that are not necessarily happening in their own country, but are happening somewhere else. So this is an example of how it affects the economy. Now, all of you who are going to be leading your organizations or are part of organizations, and all who are pursuing a management program, must understand that nothing happens without being analytical. You have to be monitoring how the world is moving, because this data is available with us. Now, there is something called the World Bank GSC stress, the Global Supply Chain Stress Index. Okay. So the GSCSI is able to track from the past data, predict how stressed our supply chain, our global supply chain is. Now, if you see on this graph here, you'll see that there have been these horrible spikes, where in 2022, before that, it is highly stressed, because we find that 22, after the COVID, after 22, I mean, COVID had just gotten over, and uh, all over the world, economies were trying to recover. So everybody was, at that point, there was a huge demand for oil and everything, all kinds of goods and services from around the world. The stress reduced because the supply chain kind of evened out. But after 2024, you'll see that again there is a spike, because the Russia-Ukraine war of 2023 meant that there were some supply chain glitches, like wheat from Ukraine was not reaching other parts of the world. Oil from Russia was under blockade because the European nations had stopped buying oil, Russian oil, and so Russia. I mean, they were not completely stopped, but Russian oil blockade. Russia was facing oil blockade. Then we see that 2025 Trump wins the elections, and from then on, the whole world has been, has been pushed into a very tumultuous kind of a situation. And finally, we see that it has culminated in the 2026 March onwards, the Middle East war. So you'll see that these spikes, this pressure, you'll have to, this global supply chain stress, you will be able to see that this kind of index is kept by the World Bank, and you should be looking at this index. Just an example I've given you, but there is a trend which is available. Check these places where you will understand that where we are headed in the future also, because easily that is called predictive analysis, and I'll be talking about it. AI is a good way to use to do predictive analysis. Now, TEUs is nothing but the 20 unit, so a TU means a typical container which is 20 feet long. So it is called the TEU unit. So whenever in the ships there are two or three types of containers, the minimum is 20 feet container. So this means this is calculated for million TEUs. Now we come to, as I said, when we discussed earlier, what do good countries do, smart countries, what do they do in times of crises? They know that supply chain can be jammed anytime, anywhere because of the unpredictability of the world. So generally what is told is that, and most of you will be able to understand this because your countries also, the government must have come up with a few measures. So let's see whether you can write in the chat box also and let me see whether that is happening, whatever I'm saying to you, whether that is really happening or not. In India, a directive has been given that you have to travel less, you have to do work from home so that there is less use of fuel. All these things have kicked in. So reducing the import-led consumption, that is what is the first step that a good country will take. And emergency supply diversification, where India immediately, as soon as the war began, India began to shop around the world for oil. So from just around 15 countries or so, India immediately moved to 40 different countries and has added 5 new supply routes. As I said, we've gone from Australia and from the Americas, because Venezuela also supplies oil to, crude oil to India. So we have now gone to different places. 5 new supply routes have been created since, in the past 3 months. Then in the case of Russia-Ukraine war, Europe pivoted. Europe pivoted to reduce Russian dependence and began procuring oil and wheat and everything, corn and all from USA. Demand rationing is another way countries respond, and I gave you the example of India. Europe has done this. It has to avoid the piracy. Right now, what is taking place in the north of Africa is, the pirate ships. So to avoid those that piracy and choke points, they have begun to reroute the oil from the Strait of Bab al Mandab, from where they used to earlier their oil used to come. It has moved away from there, and now it comes over the Cape of Good Hope. So they are completely avoiding Middle East, and the Strait of Hormuz. Fuel switching is another way by which countries are responding, like Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, South Korea have switched to coal-based power plants. India is substituting imported gas for coal. So and India's solar and capacity is also very large, but it is fast being augmented, because now this crisis is being used as a reason to change the way India consumes energy. The fourth way in which they do it is demand reduction and rationing. So most countries are trying to effect behavioral changes amongst its citizens. So Vietnam and Philippines has declared a national energy emergency. Then some of the Southeast Asian countries have put embargoes, and Egypt has reduced public lighting and asked shop owners to reduce business hours. So this is all part of their emergency, measures. Then, of course, price controls and subsidies. So for a little while, every government likes to absorb thinking that the war will get over and things will come back to normal. So some countries have done that, but they can't do it for too long. It's just about a month or two one can hold out, but after that, like in the case of India, the prices have begun to rise for fuel. So countries which did this kind of experiment, thinking that the war will get over soon, was India, Croatia, Hungary, and Japan. But as the war is drawing on, this has changed. and accelerated clean energy transition. This is what China has done. This is what Chile is doing. This is what India has been doing. Whereas I told you in the earlier slide also that India is moving very fast to the alternate energy sources. Taiwan has actually reactivated its nuclear grids. Japan, Taiwan, all these had, phased out their nuclear energy. They are now forced to rethink and perhaps begin their nuclear energy plants, restart them all over again. Many all over the world, in other parts of the world, work from home is now happening, and cooling in buildings has been limited, and public transportation is has been encouraged. Restricted government travel. India also has this right now, that government travel has been restricted completely. Foreign tours, or even using those uh, the several vehicles go past. I think it's called a cavalcade or something like that. All that has finished. The VIP, all that has given way to just one car, one minister, one car. And of course, there's a launch of nationwide energy saving, plans and processes. No country is safe. All of us are now facing this disruption, and we have to see what smart countries do. Of course, the case of India is what I'm going to discuss here. We have been told, I mean, companies in India have been told to look at their operating models and to make them more resilient. What are operating models? That means they should look at the way their procurement model. If the procurement model is too global dependent, they have to look for localized merchandise suppliers, or they have to look for localized raw material suppliers, or they have to look at suppliers from peaceful nations. They have been asked to strengthen their balance sheets by doing a bit of cost cutting, or alternate uses of the same or complementary products to be used instead of whatever is, so rework their production lines in order to strengthen their balance sheets. Then they have been asked to build new supply chains. That means, as I said earlier, look at different vendors across, so that they are less vulnerable to the changes that are taking place. They have been asked also to reskill their available manpower as technology, automation, and AI are reshaping industries. They have been asked to do market diversification, so that goods that are going out of that are being exported should steer clear of the of the disturbed areas of the world. Invest strategically for future readiness and capitalizing on new opportunities, and increasing the um, uh, expenditure on R&D. So this is something that India has initiated with the various chambers of commerce of the country. The government officials are working with industry to enable a more robust supply chain response to whatever is going on around the world. Now, if you were in an organization and you had to take these decisions, what would you do? Now, this is something that is very commonplace. Everybody is facing this. So, what you could do is, first of all, build the resilience. Whenever there is a prolonged crisis, resilience has to be maximized, and you should not choose cost minimization. You have to build resilience. You should not always look at cost minimization, because cost minimization means that you will not pay sufficient attention to R&D. We need somebody who's able to keep the costs reasonably within control while they are building their resilience. So at this point, I want to exhort all of you and tell you to understand that this risk can be managed in better times. It's like they say about war, that when do you prepare for war? Not when it starts. You prepare for war when there is peace. So it's like this with the global supply chain also. The analogy is perfect. You don't look around and try to build resilience, because that's not going to happen when you are in a crisis. You build resilience when you are not a crisis. So what would you do if you have to? You should, as a procurement in charge, you would always be looking at various options in the supply chain. You would increase your supply network. You would undertake near shoring instead of far shoring, because near countries, say from Singapore, or in case of India, or if it's Africa, from within Africa, or the nearby nations like Madagascar or so on, they are better bets, or India also for that matter, than say Europe right now and the Middle East. And utilize predictive data analytics to monitor bottlenecks. Let me tell you that there's it's not the end of the world. There are some companies you should know that actually began when there was a crisis, when there was a huge economic crisis in the world. One of them is Airbnb. We know how much Airbnb has grown. It was established in 2008 during the meltdown, the whole global economic meltdown. But today it is a 75 billion market capitalized company with a 12.2 billion revenue in 2025. Uber also was born during the same period when the whole world was in the throes of an economic crisis, which was in 2009, because the crisis continued from 2008 right up to 2012, when not really too many countries ever recovered from it. But you can see an Uber did very well, and today its turnover is around 170 billion dollars, and its revenue is $52 billion. FedEx was similarly born in 1971 when USA was facing a severe internal recession. But today you see that it is worth $88 billion, and its market capitalization is almost $68 billion. So I just gave you these examples because when they say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So there's nothing like a crisis as such. There will always be these sparks. There will always be these difficult times. We have to plan for it in the better times. So what is currently what are companies doing to build resilient supply chains? Some very good examples: Toyota, Nike, DHL, Maersk. All these have diversified and regionalized their sourcing. They don't do just in time. Now the Japanese JIT and the it will no longer work, because JIT meant that you could have the company situated anywhere, but the warehouse would be close by. But now we can't do this, because merchandise, if there is a block in the merchandise, you will need to COVID has taught us this also, that it's better to be sourcing from close by areas. So what did Toyota do? It chose closer suppliers and markets. It went to Korea. That was the closest to it. It changed its production layout just so that it would begin to source from the closer markets. And it analyzed its supplier vulnerabilities following the natural disasters it had in, Japan had the Fukushima and the tsunami and the earthquakes, and that they then got out of Japan and situated their works in India, in China, not so much China, in the US, in India, in Europe. So they, moved out of Japan, because Japan's topography is extremely vulnerable to natural disasters. What did Nike do? Nike uses predictive demand analysis software, and it uses the RFID technology to track inventory. So they do not overproduce, they do not overstock. They have reasonable stocks, and they send it all around the world. DHL uses 360-degree resilience. That is the name of the software they use. Not software, it's called a model. Within DHL, it's the 360 resilience model that gives real-time updates on risk, disease outbreaks, and extreme weather conditions. So all this matters to DHL because they are a courier company, they are a goods transfer company. So for them, these tracking these three incidents are extremely important. What does Maersk do? It has used an adaptive network design, which is called Gemini, to connect major hubs. And it regionalizes port delays, and it has given up on JIT and improved its supply chain into changed it into a more robust one. So there are some different kinds of, this is like, every organization should have a dashboard in which it kind of on different parameters. This is just an AI image. This is not a standard image. Please understand. This is just to tell you how a dashboard can help to know which are the vulnerable areas and which are the areas where risk is low. Okay, so you can have different categories like a supplier risk or a geopolitical risk or different environmental risk, demand risk. All these are different types of risks which you could map. You could find a trend for them, and you could see where your company is safe and begin to source from there. The second is using AI. AI can be used to manage risk through its automation, through intelligence, and use of agentic AI. But here, a little word of caution that organizations need right governance and a workforce ready to partner with their digital teammates. So this is something that is not still mature enough, and companies are investing a lot in skilling the workforce, as well as there are ethical issues in this also. So there is no doubt that AI is going to be important, but its use has to be ethical and appropriate. As new, chief procurement officers, your new realities are not simple, as McKinsey has put it very succinctly. It's not just managing service quality and cost and capital as it was in the traditional supply chain. Now we have a more elements to it than just these three. We have to add agility, we have to add resilience, and we have to add sustainability also. So these six areas is what a CPO should be focusing on. And as I said, it doesn't happen in a crisis. It is something that you have to address when there is business as usual. Rerouting, agility, and route flexibility. These are again decisions that a CPO has to take in case there is a blockade, in case there is a breakdown. Then there has to be a plan for quick rerouting. There has to be an agility with which everybody works and sorts that out. And you have also different ways by which you will be able to procure that material. So it is true of pharma supply chains, it is true of oil supply chains, it is true of semiconductor supply chains. As I said, all those critical goods that we are talking about, we need to build in this resilience through rerouting, agility, and route flexibility. Now, all of you need to understand I have 10 minutes more, so I'll be finishing quickly. What is the point at which, what will you be monitoring? How will you know that this risk is going to become bigger than normal? That's where your expertise will come in. That's where your acumen comes in, where you will be able to predict that what is the chance of this risk actually taking place. So there's a simple formula where if you monitor those factors, you will see that it is at the intersection of vulnerability and exposure to unforeseen events. What are unforeseen events? They could be black swan events. Pandemic was completely unforeseen. But today, everybody in their data has taken into account that pandemics can be more frequent occurrences. This pandemic in 2020 or 2019, COVID-19, as they say, happened 100 years later. So you can understand that it took 100 years for a pandemic to take place. Now we know that this can happen more often. So any CPO will be thinking of this and factoring it. And what would I do as a CPO? I would take stock of the company's current supply chain vulnerabilities and strengthen them. I will analyze the potential single points of failure. That if, like, we never thought that the Strait of Hormuz would ever be, you know, blocked. We never ever thought of it. The world did not think of it. But this one single event has, the potential to rock the boat of the whole world. And we also have to understand that critical inputs are at risk. Which critical inputs are at risk from shortages or price volatility? So this is where, at the intersection of vulnerability and exposure, that we have to keep monitoring, and we have to take mitigative action. So quickly, we will go through this because I think there is less time. You need to ask me questions also. So we'll some of the things that you do is you have a scorecard on supplier risk management. So when we are procuring from a country, then we should also do its scorecard in terms of risk. That, okay, if this is high on risk, then let me cultivate a B country, a C country, a D country. So I have at least 4 or 5 countries that if one fails me, I can go to the others. Then we all have to do scenario planning. We have to do scenario planning with various factors, which include geopolitical, natural, cyber attack, demand spikes, anything. I mean, currency, supply failure. You have to come up with what can disrupt the supply chain, and you assign a weightage to it so that you will be able to monitor it better. Multi-sourcing is, we've already done this. Resilience and multi-sourcing go together. So supply diversification is a good idea. Strategic inventory and buffering is a good idea, because like India, when the crisis began, the government every day was shouting through whichever channel it could, saying that we have 70 days of supply, not to worry, nothing to worry, we will be buffering our stocks, so we have adequate, so this, because we have the strategic inventory and the buffer, the whole economy did not collapse. The economy is still growing and still thriving and still functional. So we have to build that buffer. And of course, as I said, we have to be ready with workforce readiness and upskilling, because future is going to be monitored with good quality data. And if we have to access to that data, we need the human mind to be able to interpret it, more precisely and accurately. Finally, you must understand that nothing happens in a void. Everything is an ecosystem, and you have to be working towards building a robust and resilient supply chain ecosystem. How do you do that? You have to work with your suppliers, with your partners, with the industry, and with the government to build this resilience. And that's why we go back to that slide where I said smart countries work with the industry, and industry works with the government in order to ensure that there is resilience in the supply chain. This is my last slide, wherein you will see that some African initiatives, in the face of this current crisis that is going on, already they have taken steps. Iran-US-Israel conflict. The intra-Africa trade is, it is through the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCTAD, has been activated. So countries within Africa are trading with one another now, and not dependent on getting things from outside. The African Export-Import Bank has extended a $10 billion underwriting of critical imports like fuel, agricultural inputs, and pharmaceuticals to the various different countries within within Africa. Sorry. Increasing the regional resource efficiency and resilience is happening. Like Nigeria's oil refinery capacity has increased to 1 million barrels per day. Zambia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Ethiopia, they are also expanding their strategic fuel reserves. Mozambique and Uganda are developing greenfield refining capacity. So suddenly it's a wake-up call for everyone. Trade facilitation is happening among the African countries to reduce inter-border trade friction, because mostly, supply chain gets blocked with these kind of things also. So these transit delays, these tariffs, inter-border tariffs, and all this is trying to be eased out using a smart border system, using digital and all that, so that goods flow into each other's countries through the boundaries more easily. And fertilizer shortage is being addressed because it has threatened the food supply chain. Of the because most of the fertilizer, it's a byproduct, as you know, and this is comes from the Middle East. The majority of the supply comes from Middle East, and African agricultural supply chain is right now under threat. So always, as I said, and history also has shown that some crises are made into opportunities. So the African multinationals are de-risking their networks. African ports, manufacturing capabilities, and logistics infrastructure are becoming increasingly attractive to the whole world, because Africa relatively is less disturbed as compared to the Middle East. So with this, you must understand future ready supply chains have these characteristics. They will have AI and automation, they will have predictive analytics, they will be agile, they will be sustainable, and they will be resilient. So, this is what we have covered today. We have gone through all this, and if there are any questions, I will take those questions. Okay, have I done that? Can somebody confirm that I have unmuted you?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Sorry for the delay.
So, others, you can ask your doubts. You can clear it now.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes. Now, I don't have much to say. All I need to say is thank you for a very informative presentation. And now I was about to ask if the PowerPoint presentation is going to be shared. And
yeah, why not? I can send it to Shama, and she can, pass it on to all of you, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Penki, Pienki. You said everything was clear. Good session. Eugene says, "What's the TUs again?" Okay, TU is, it's a 20 feet container. Okay, so there is a certain height, length, breadth, and height dimension to it. So either all the shipping trade, as they say, is the unit of calculation is a TEU, okay, or an FEU. So it is the GSCI that I showed you was in the unit of TEU. Please Google it and you will be able to see it. Okay, TU is the trade, the unit for trade. On says it was clear. Thank you. Seems our governments need to do more. Yeah. Yes, proactive governments will. I mean, India this time has managed its crisis pretty well, because this time we know that the government has been proactive when these things were not there at all. So yeah, India is a good example, one can say. Thank you, Detmos. Thank you. I guess that's okay, Shama. They don't have any questions, so I guess we can.
Okay, ma'am. So thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful sections. Before winding up, I need to inform others that we have put a form in the chat box, so you can please fill up these forms. And also tomorrow we are conducting an induction for logistics and supply chain management courses. You can collect the link for the induction from your advisors. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the session. Thank you.